Welcome everybody to this Creative Zone webinar in collaboration with the Dubai Business Women Council. And this is part of the She Leads initiative. That is an accelerator program that we have recently launched, where we are looking to accelerate and incubate more than 100 women entrepreneurs. And we have also extended this invitation out to male as well from all over the world and in Dubai, where we're looking to help and accelerate startups. Today we have Humaira Ali. She's the director of Intuitive Change. That is a consultancy based in the UK, specialized in change and transformation. She assists companies to shape and deliver increasingly sophisticated transformation programs. So Humaira, thank you so much for being here with us. It's indeed a pleasure to spend this time with you.
Thank you very much, and assalamu alaikum to everybody this evening in Dubai time. I know we're in slightly different time zones, so I'm Humaira Ali and I'm in London, and I'm going to share my screen, but you will still be able to see Lorenzo and I throughout, and I will let you know that at the end of this session, we'll make sure that everybody can get a copy of these slides. So, and don't worry, this is not going to be death by PowerPoint. So let's make a start. So firstly, Lorenzo, can I thank you and Creative Zone? Can I thank the Dubai Business Women's Council as well for creating these events? This is very, very exciting. And the series of events you've got coming up as well look really, really interesting. So this is a great place for everyone to be. This is week 1, and today's session is called Business Launchpad. So let's start by me telling you a little bit about myself. I'm not sure how to get rid of this here. It just seems to be, okay, well, we'll work around that. So, okay, so who am I? As Lorenzo said, I am Humaira and I have my own change management consultancy. So what is my service? You'll call me up because your big program is going horribly wrong. Money's out the door, people are leaving, everyone's angry, customers screaming and shouting. You normally call me and I'll come and help turn it around. And sometimes you may have to make change. The nature of your business, the nature of the market may have changed. And as a result of that, you're not really sure what steps to take. So again, you'll give me a call. And some of the projects I've worked on over the years, I mean, my most recent project, large-scale project, was for the UK government. You may know that the United Kingdom has decided to leave the European Union, which I'm very, very sad about and very upset about, but this is not a political discussion today. And as part of that, one of the most heavily hit areas will be the agriculture sector. And so the UK government Department of the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs called upon me to help them because they said, we know how to write policy, but what we don't know how to do is how do we deconstruct all the setup that we have around the agriculture sector today, and we want to migrate in our new world to something else, and how do we build that up again? So, and that's to do with people, process and technology. So that's on the larger scale. Most recently, and obviously in the last 6 months, we've really all worldwide been dealing with this COVID or coronavirus pandemic. And what has been amazing, certainly here in the UK, is the way that communities of people have come together to help each other. And in that, we found that people in the local community were ready to volunteer to help people, and they formed groups, which we called mutual aid groups, in order to buy people shopping, people who may be shielding, or buy them their medicine, or perhaps be a friend to them on the phone if they were isolating, because these are very extraordinary times. And during that time, a number of issues started to come to the surface, including one around being able to pay for these goods and services, because if you are at home, you perhaps are older, you don't necessarily use digital banking, maybe you work in cash, or maybe you only have a credit card. How are you going to pay people for the shopping that they're buying you? And where I live in central London, we have a vast range of socioeconomic, from some of the wealthiest to some of the poorest people. So what about people who couldn't afford to do things? And myself and 3 other women hit upon the same problem at the same time, and by chance we came together and created a product for these mutual aid groups, which effectively was a payment account. So think bank account with no bank, just an account, and debit cards that hang off it, so that people could donate money into the pot, and then volunteers could use those payment cards to go and buy shopping. It sounds very simple, but you know, it is something which has got a heavy amount of regulation in the UK. We worked with a fintech, and very quickly we went from, we had the idea, we discovered the problem and had the idea. Within 10 days, we had nearly 100 people utilizing this product. So great things can happen when great minds come together very quickly. And in the course of that, some of the things I'm going to talk about today were done or weren't done. And as a result of that, when we started to talk about constituting and forming a proper company, we hit a few hurdles. So without further ado, let's talk about what we're going to cover off today. So let me just move myself and Lorenzo over here. So the idea about Business Launchpad today is we want to talk about from the moment you have an idea all the way through to the moment you might go live with your company or with a particular product. There are millions of things we could cover today. So what I want to do is focus on two key areas, two key tools. If you use these tools, you should be in a pretty good place and pretty good shape for starting your business. And we'll talk about those in a second. And the two tools we're going to cover today are the business model canvas and something as simple as the project plan, but it might be a little more than you might be expecting. Just note, a couple of things I'm not covering today are going to be covered in later sessions. So if you were here for Marketing 101 or public speaking, stay with us for today, but I think you need to come back to a later session with that, okay? So let us begin and let us think about some of the questions that we should be asking when we want to start a business. Now I've put 7 questions or 7 lines with probably more than 7 questions in here. But this is something that everybody should be thinking about. And if you have already started your business, it does not hurt to come back and look at these questions again. And the most important question is question number 1, okay? What is my product or service? And for the purpose of today's presentation, I'm just going to reference the word product. Obviously, for my own business, it's a service. I'm providing a service. I guess I'm the product, but I'm not for sale. You know, and if we talk about product, then I think some of the examples I give might be a bit easier to understand. So we need to answer the question, what is my product? You will be surprised the number of businesses or new businesses I've come across where the owner, the person who is maybe looking for investment or is looking to start to think about how are they going to sell their product, is unable to articulate what that product is in a sentence. And what you need to think about is whatever it is you are selling. So for example, I have here Exhibit A. My company wants to make mugs, okay? And, you know, I should be able to describe this in a sentence. And not only what it is, but what does it do? And how is it going to add value? Because if you can articulate that, and it's worth going to test that now with friends and family and perhaps people who don't know what you're doing, see if you can articulate that in a sentence. Everything else flows from there. Think about it this way, the elevator pitch, okay? You get into the elevator in a huge building, and in walks in a potential investor, someone you know that you've been wanting to give a call and see if you can arrange a meeting. You've got the time it takes to go from that ground floor, say to the 5th, maybe the 10th floor before that person gets out, to introduce yourself and give the one line on what your product is. And if you take nothing else away from today, this is the first thing that you need to really focus on. And I've spent an inordinate amount of time because it is that important.
Even Humera, if you let me just say something small here, this to me relates very much to Simon Sinek's what is your why? Why is it that you do what you do? And how he describes the why, the what, and the how. But being the why is such an important thing. And this relates to this, not to what is your USP, what is your unique selling proposition.
Yes.
I think I've come across so many businesses that they don't truly understand what it is that makes them unique and why is it that you do what you do. Once you figure that out, it's a lot easier to reach to your market audience and tell them the benefits of why dealing with you is the right approach. And we welcome your questions. I wanted to say throughout the session, please send us your questions, your comments. If in the chat you want to put some thoughts, something similar that has happened to you in this, or you have questions on the Q&A, put them through and we will try to bring them as we go along on the session without trying to interrupt too much. But thank you, Humaira. I just wanted to bring that up at that stage.
It's really, really, really good quote there. So I'm going to whip through the rest of these because I want to get us onto the business model canvas that these questions feed into. So, you know, we need to think about things for, is there a demand for my product? I mean, there will always, where there is tea and coffee, there will always be a demand for mugs. But why would they buy my mug over someone else's mug? What does the market look like? You don't even have to do the most expensive market research. You absolutely can be testing and trialing this with not only people you know, but people that you know from different demographics. And so always think about this. The person who succeeds is not the person who creates the most beautiful product and then one day shows up to market saying, here, buy my product. There is something about making sure you're testing the concept all the way through. Who's my audience? Who am I actually going to sell this mug to? Now, I don't know if you can read that, but this is one of my favorite mugs. I am very much pro-women, and I'm sure many of you can chuckle because there is definitely a danger sometimes, present company accepted, of course, Lorenzo, that there might be a man doing some work. So is my market for women or men or somebody else? And understanding also, where is your target market? So as well as customers, we also need to think about who's going to help us create this product. So partners, suppliers, staff, resources, and all of the things that come with that. And in the case of our Lightning Age project, what about regulation and laws? Financial services is heavily regulated worldwide. For a variety of reasons. There will be other things. If you are developing medicines, if you're, you know, numbers of different things, you will have various regulations you need to comply with, and you need to understand those up front, because that type of regulation, it shouldn't be, but it could do, end up making your product cost prohibitive. Of course, money, we all got to think about money. You'd be surprised how many people get carried away with their new product, and they end up spending quite a lot on producing it and not really testing what will the market pay for it. You know, I could make a mug out of solid gold. Well, it probably wouldn't be a good idea because gold's quite a soft metal, but you know, who's going to pay for that? It'd probably be very expensive and I'm not likely to make much money from it. Number 6 here is about a risk management. So as we're thinking about our product, what is going to help or hinder the creation of the delivery of this product to market? And we'll talk when we go into the project plan section a little bit about risk management as well. 7th, and what I would say is the second most important thing. Who am I? Who are you? How are you going to inject your brand into this? Because this is your product, this is your baby. And with whatever you are producing, you know, there comes an element of putting yourself in there. Now, this has pros and cons. If we think about the Virgin brand, Richard Branson, I don't know if you all know Richard Branson, but wherever the Virgin brand is, we think of that guy who's kind of larking about with the beard. He's very warm and friendly, and he wants really to plug good customer service. Let's think also about another brand though, Jo Malone. And she made many cosmetics and personal things. And one of the things that she learned, one of the biggest mistakes she made, was naming her brand after herself. Because when she sold that brand, she lost the rights to her name. And now that company is making decisions that she doesn't even agree with. So there's things to think about when you are starting your company and what there is in there. So I'm going to pause there for a second before we do business model canvas. Lorenzo, I don't know if people have got any thoughts or
Yeah,
questions.
there's a few good questions coming up. I think I can raise a few of these and see if we can answer them. There's this one that says, do you have any advice on how to arrive at your USP, especially if your competitors are bigger, are more established? How do we encourage that moment of coming up with the USPs? What we can advise, Humaira?
Well, I mean, this is an interesting one, because if we could all come up with, you know, that $1 million idea, I think, you know, testing is a huge part of it, as I mentioned before. So you're saying, how can you come up with their unique selling point? I don't think you think of a product and then try and find its unique selling point afterwards. If we dial back, generally, when you're producing a product or service, you're trying to fill a hole in the marketplace. You're trying to resolve a problem. You are looking for a space of something that people need. Sometimes you come upon that through your own experience, like, do you know what, why can't I find this? This is a big gap in the market if I produce this. So an example is in Britain, wedding dresses for larger ladies. You know, it was such a horrible experience. And two wonderful women who live not far from London set up the Curves and Couture boutique. And they have a special experience for women who are of plus sizes to come select and choose their wedding dresses. And there's a whole thing that goes around that. So their unique selling point is that they themselves were larger ladies, and they really fully understand that. So when you talk about competitors and, you know, how can you come up with something over a competitor, I always say focus on your own product and your own service. There is always space in a market, or generally there's space in the market for multiple competitors. The question is, are you connected in with your customers? Are you connected in with what they really need? And very quickly, let's think about Zoom versus Skype versus Microsoft Teams, and who succeeded during this lockdown and why. Have a think about what is it that's different between this product that makes it easier to access, for example, or easier to consume. And what did Microsoft have to do to catch up? Because quite frankly, I think Teams is awful. Does that answer the question, hopefully?
Yeah, very good, very good. There's another very good question here. It says, not all businesses can be innovative. It could be a copy of other businesses. In these cases, what can be a USP? I mean, even to me, there's a few things that come to mind, and I would like to hear what you think, Humaira. But to me, I agree, not everything is a unique new product or a new service, but how do you become different? What's your USP? To me, are issues to do with customer service. How is it that you are different on how you approach your customer, your delivery, your brand identity, the values that guide you on every transaction? There's so many things that can make you different. And I love to see new companies come up as part of an already existing industry and totally disrupt the industry by simply delivering better customer service, having a cooler brand, more modern, and talking the language of the people that they're going after as their market audience. These are some things that come into my mind, but we'd love to hear your opinion on this.
Well, I mean, how can I top that? Because I was going straight after the customer service. I mean, how often do you return to purchase or use a product if your customer experience has been very good around it? Whether it's a product that you need, such as banking. In the UK, the HSBC group acquired a mortgage lender called First Direct, a bank and a mortgage lender. And they are renowned for their customer service. They are falling over themselves to be helpful, supportive, and nice. And you cannot, and their whole ethos, the way they hire people, everything is all to do with that customer experience. So absolutely, if there are multiple products in the market. Also, we come back to question number 7. Who am I and how will I inject my own brand into this? Each of us is unique. Each of us has our own qualities. And so there's a thought there about injecting some of your own personality into that. And that can manifest itself in the physical product or in the way that you do business and who you choose to do business with. And last but not least, we have a climate emergency happening right now. And many countries, you know, are going through the mill and they're talking about a green recovery. So actually, ethical and sustainable practices are what is going to put you a cut above some of the more established enterprises that are out there.
I really believe on what you're saying now about injecting your own brand into this and injecting your own who you are. And I think it was on one of the comments, somebody was bringing up the example of Elon Musk. And you were saying before examples of this. I believe 100% on this. I feel nowadays any successful company has to have its own leadership, its own people, you know, the face of the company, being out there on social media, on the press releases. I think it's just a very important element for today's success.
For sure, absolutely. So we've talked about these questions, and these questions feed into the first of our tools. So let's move on to the business model canvas. Okay, now I just really want this to kind of move out the way. So maybe I can pop it down here or something. There we go. Okay, and Lorenzo, I'm going to move you over here. Okay, so this business model canvas is effectively the answers to those questions in one place. And you know, we're talking a moment about why that's really helpful, but let's just quickly whiz through it. So your value proposition is your product, okay, or your service. What is it you're selling? What is unique about it? What does it do? And how is it going to add value? And again, you need to be able to articulate that in as few sentences as possible. And again, this is to help you. To the right of it, we've got sort of three areas which are talking about customer. So this is about your product going out to market, whether it's the relationship with different customers, the different segments of different customers. So, you know, who are the specific types of customers, and also the channels that you will use to get both the product and the communication about the product and your company out there. So is that social media? Is that email, the internet? Are you going to be selling it through shops, through Amazon, through your friends? You know, what is the type of model that you'll use there? And then to the left of it, we've got how the value proposition or how the product is actually produced. So what are the key activities that you actually need to do? We'll talk about that project plan in a little while. The key partners. So, you know, if I'm going to use this mug and make this mug, and maybe my particular company is going to have unique hand-painted mugs, for example, do I really want to go and produce the mugs for myself as well? Maybe I want to work with a supplier who's going to be able to do those reasonably cheaply for me. And equally, you know, if you are using online, you're not going to host all of the IT yourself. You'll probably buy services to do that as well. And equally, resources, whether that's staff, whether that's the materials to make your product. Let's say I saw someone said they were a chef. So you probably need to invest in equipment and kitchen and what have you. So there's a whole load of things here that relate to the production of this value proposition. And then underpinning both of them is what it costs and how you're going to bring income in to both revenue from the value proposition, but I think it's also useful to see where else we're going to seek that revenue from, so investment. So that is the business model canvas. And again, I'm going to pause there now and Lorenzo, wonder if people have got questions about this.
Yeah, we invite everybody to put your questions through. We have a few questions asking people, are you going to be sharing the presentation and a copy of the video itself? Yes, we're going to send an email back to everybody after the session with the full presentation and with a copy of the session on a link. And this is great material. I mean, I can see this business model canvas in front of us, the key partners, the activities, the key resources, the value proposition. You're going to take us through this, but I can already see there's so much value here for any startup, for any entrepreneur that is getting started. So please send us your questions. We would like to hear some of your queries. We don't have any specific questions now, so maybe, Kumere, if you want to take us through the canvas itself a little bit, and then we'll start getting some of the questions out.
Sure, okay. So I kind of briefly just did sort of do it at a really high level, but let's quickly use an example. So I'm going to come back to my mug. Sorry for keeping it so simple. I was thinking about using Lightning Aid, but we can talk about where we came unstuck with some of that as well. So if my value proposition is my mug, and the unique thing is hand-painted mugs for the market, and for you to enjoy tea and perhaps a beverage that you cannot enjoy using any other mug, and it's specifically a feminist mug. Okay, so there's my value proposition, and I'm also going to think about probably mentioning some of the customer segments here in my value proposition space that I'm really aiming towards. Just a couple of the sort of demand criteria. So this is definitely for women who want to make a point in the office, especially when they've got a co-worker who has a habit of just prancing around the office and telling everyone what to do without actually doing any work for themselves. Maybe it would make a great gift. If I want to think about my customer, so let's talk about customer segments. So we've talked about potential women, maybe it's gifts for men, so I think you're sort of getting the idea of how do we break this down. And when we think about those customer segments, let's talk about actually the customer themselves. So let's remove the mug for a second. And if we're saying, it's women maybe in offices, what sort of lifestyle do they lead? What do they like to do with their time? What do they naturally reach for? What other sort of goods and services do they buy? What sort of, you can really do some deep research into these spaces as you're breaking down each of your customers. You can do it by age demographics, you can do it by socioeconomic, by cultural background. However you decide to carve this up, this is not about getting to really niche and specific targets, but it certainly is about trying to just understand the lifestyle and the life journey, the life choices, and some of the conversations that those customer segments are having as well. What are their sort of political views? I know it sounds really odd. Why do I care about political views when I'm, selling a mug? But if this is a mug that is aimed towards sort of feminist types, then actually perhaps that's a more liberal market, so we get the idea there. And just flicking through to the other side, if we think about resources, so you may be a startup, you may have a value proposition which is about low priced but wholesome food. And certainly here in the UK, we really encourage incubators and startups, and perhaps there's an opportunity there to work with a company that supports incubators, and perhaps local authorities will have a space for rent where they can kit out the kitchen for you. And so actually, you know that you're going to need to provide all of that kitchen equipment. And will you be able to do this yourself? Are you going to need staff? What about managing orders? Is this going to be a shop? Is this going to be an online, which is some of the conversations in your channel? But as a result of that, are you going to need staff? So I'm going to stop there because I could spend all day going through the detail of this. But I'm wondering if any questions have come through.
Yeah, there's a few good questions coming up. One of them says, when you begin to grow, should you be changing the lean canvas periodically?
So this is a really good tool to come and revisit. And as you're growing, my question to you is are you growing just in volume? Or is the nature of your product starting to change as well? So it is worth using in both those examples. So if you're growing in volume, it's sometimes worth reviewing your customer segments. Let's say that you went live on January the 1st. And 6 months later, you're saying, well, actually, who are the people? I was aiming this mug towards women of a certain age or women of a certain political ideal. But 6 months later, who was actually buying my mug? And this is where metrics and measures, how are you going to be able to make sure you understand who were your customers, and do you need to review the segment? And perhaps you found that this was really popular with men of a certain age. And so there's a question about, does the product hold as it is, or do we need to make some modifications or introduce a new line? So it is a good tool to use just to reevaluate and reassess where you're at. Does that help?
Excellent, yeah. Another good question says, how is this business model canvas used, and how is it similar or different than a traditional business plan?
So this is a tool on the way to inputting to a business case. And we're going to cover business case in a second as part of the project plan. So in a way, this is, you literally have this on one page, and you get your pen, or you can type if you really want to type, and scroll the things that you want to scroll in here. But as I said right at the start, you need to be able to articulate things in a couple of sentences. And what that does is it really helps you focus as you're thinking about your business case. And let me just very quickly flip over to some of the things that went wrong with Lightning Aid. We had a real passion to make sure that money was able to get to where it needed to go so that nobody went hungry. That's a really nice aspiration, okay? But when we thought about, wow, this is a really good tool, this is this payment account and this bank card, what else could we use it for? It was hard to try and articulate what the value proposition was, because in the Lightning Aid circumstances, that was for, it was done charitably. A lot of people, so Visa were underpinning the cards, they waived their fees, but they're not going to do that in a normal market proposition. Similarly, Railsbank were providing their staff for free, and that's not what would normally happen. So actually, we hadn't really considered things about resources. And equally, on the value proposition side, people were really struggling to say, what is it that this is going to do? Who is it going to help? And so there is something to think about there.
Excellent. Did you want to go to the next slide?
Yeah, so let's move on from the business model canvas now, and let's talk about the project plan. Okay, come on screen, you can move. There we go. So let me just move this out of the way. There we go. I'll leave you there, Lorenzo. Okay. So we've talked about the business model canvas, which helps you to articulate your business model, your proposition to customers, suppliers, and costs, in one particular place. Now we need to think about how are you going to get from idea to actually live to market. And for that, you do need a project plan. Now, what I've got here again, magic number 7, are 7 key items for your project plan. And each of them can be as big or as small as you need them to be. What I would say for those budding project and program managers out there, if you were in a huge corporate environment, there may be 1 or 2 additional extras. I've buried them within here. So things like corporate governance and things like that. So project plan, again, item number 1 is the most important. What is the scope of what you're going to do? What are your goals? And how are you going to measure success? Because when that product goes live, you need to know that it's successful. Otherwise, how are you going to prove to your investors that you're headed in the right direction? Okay. And let's just very quickly talk about scope and scope creep. Okay. So I'm going to bring my favorite prop here, the mug, back. Okay. So I'm going to create a mug, and it's a mug that you can drink any liquid in, and it's going to have a single design. And along the way, as we start to talk about the business idea, somebody might say, wouldn't it be great if you had a mug with 2 handles, for hot soup? Or maybe we could do a mug and a cup and a spoon set and It's really easy to get carried away. And one of the things that you need to do is every time, your scope, remember, is this mug, okay, with this design. Every time you think about either expanding upon, changing or altering your product, you need to do an assessment to say, how is that going to alter my cost, my customers, and all the things that we were looking at the business model canvas? Because sometimes people just keep on adding new features, new bits as they go without measuring whether it's going to make a difference. The cost of it now becomes cost prohibitive. It's not, what people will pay on the market may remain the same, but your costs have gone up. And equally, it may no longer be desirable in that way to the market. Okay, so managing your scope is really important. The next item, the business case. So we heard the term business case or business plan. You will not get the investment if you do not have a sound business case. Now, business case, I'm not going to go into the details today, but there are plenty of tools out there, which I'm sure Creative Zone and Dubai Business Women's Council can provide guidance on. But your business case articulates what your product is, how you are going to make income from this, and how you're going to make profit from this, and what it costs. It talks about your aspirations for this product, and it's going to talk about how you're going to deliver this product, which is everything that you will have already articulated in that in our business model canvas, and that we're going to tease out through this project plan. Okay. Schedule of tasks. So when people think about plans, often this is the bit that you think about, a list of items and dates by when they're due and what their sequence is. This is still very, very important, but it's only one part of the whole piece. Risks, issues, assumptions, and dependencies. So I mentioned on the first slide, what are the things that are going to help or hinder us? Which could get in the way? Let's take an example of electronics and electronic components, okay? The majority of the world's electronic components are manufactured in Southeast Asia. There is a huge risk for companies when there are adverse weather conditions such as tsunamis, cyclones, monsoon. We generally then see that the production will drop and the price of all those components goes up. So when you are really putting together the plan for producing your product, you need to make sure that you've thought about all the things that could affect your product from getting to market and affect it from getting to market on time. And that ranges from people, from the process, any technology, suppliers, any customer. I mean, COVID is definitely an unforeseen circumstance, but on the whole, things are always changing. So it's worthwhile keeping an eye on those. Costs. I don't think I need to say a huge amount here. Keeping an understanding of what things cost, understanding the direction of pricing in the market as well is really important. What is the tolerance? So I've mentioned tolerance here at the top, but actually, if my components become double the price within a year, am I still going to be able to afford to produce this? And again, you'll capture that via risk. And equally, what is the market prepared to pay for this? And what is my pricing structure going to be? Have I accounted for all of my costs plus some within that? Last two, communications. So I'm not talking about your mass marketing here. That's an item that should be in your schedule of tasks, that you need a marketing plan. But actually, in your own plan, managing and setting up this product, the people who have invested in you will need to be kept up to date. People sponsoring you. Perhaps you have staff working for you. They need to know what's going on. And perhaps you raise the funds by crowdfunding. So perhaps customers are co-designing with you. So there are some really important people during the pre-sales phase that need to be kept up to date. Okay. Last but not least, resources. So these are, as we talked before, what are the staff? What is the price for the staff or suppliers, and what are their costs? What are the components that I need and their availability? Just because you want to make mugs and have them out to market next week doesn't mean that you're going to be able to do that, because you've now got dependencies, and I've used the word dependencies back here, on suppliers and third parties and their ability to produce for you. So I'm going to stop there because that's quite a lot. Lorenzo, do we have any questions?
Yeah, I mean, first thing that comes to mind is I feel we need a workshop on each of these different bullets. I see so many important points being raised here. The issue of communications. I see so many companies failing at this point. People go out there, they raise funds, they engage with investors, and then they fail at communicating back with investors. What's the project going through? What's happening? The issue of costs. I mean, each of these things require an entire workshop. There's a few really interesting questions here. One of them, it says, if you pivot your idea, especially nowadays with the coronavirus, we've had a lot of companies, a lot of startups and entrepreneurs having to pivot and having to adapt their model. How much will this affect the business model canvas and this project plan? I think that's a very valid point in today's world, right?
Absolutely. And let me start with the plan before we go back to the business model canvas, actually, because plans are not set in stone. The moment you make a plan, it is a plan. That's the clue is in the title. there are going to be things and information, there's going to be things flying in, there's going to be information, the world around you is changing. And so we'll come specifically to the how do you pivot. But if we think about assumptions, as you're creating your plan, you are not going to have all of the information to hand at that time. So in the case of mugs, and I'm going to stick with my mug analogy for consistency, you know, I might not know how much it costs to print this particular design. So I'm just going to make a ballpark estimate. Once that information comes in, I'm going to insert that and see how that has a ripple effect on the rest of my plan and back into my business model canvas, which, let's just say, the business model canvas feeds primarily your business case. And so as long as your business case is stacking up, the plan can continue and go ahead. So if we have a situation like coronavirus, there are as many opportunities as there are their pitfalls. And that's where you need to perhaps pause and take stock, go through what is it that you're doing? Is it still relevant? Is the market still there for it? So for example, right now in the UK, a lot of businesses unfortunately folded. The government is having to provide subsidies for people, for companies to pay their staff. And does that mean that people really have disposable income for mugs at the end of the day? Right now, probably not. In 6 months' time, maybe. It really depends. We've got this real unknown circumstance of what is the impact of this virus, and do all our problems go away when they find a vaccine? These are things that you need to have captured here when you're talking about your risks, issues, and your dependencies. And when you come back to evaluating your business case, you know, people talk about times of adversity, times of recession are often the best time to start a business. So, you know, I don't think that's going to give you the most detailed of answers, because as you say, Lorenzo, underneath here, there is quite a lot to discuss, but I hope that gives you some sense of idea, the person who asked the question about it.
Yeah, definitely. And related to this topic of risks and issues, there is somebody here asking something very clever, and he's saying, I always wonder how many staff you should start with first. Assume keep the business as lean as possible in the early stages. I see this is something that many startups and entrepreneurs go through their journey, and they don't know when it's the right time to start growing. Maybe they know that the cash flow is still not there, is still not coming, but sometimes if you don't grow your team, if you don't grow your reach, you will never get to where you want as a business. So it's a good question. How do you balance that, Humeira, for entrepreneurs? When is the right time to start growing your team?
Right, and of course there's no fixed answer on this. And actually there's probably a few tools beyond these two tools to have a look at some of those sorts of things, whether they're pest analysis or a few others. And we will have links at the end of this presentation, which when you receive the presentation, you can take a look at that. So I'm just going to go back to the business model canvas though, right, okay? So the question is when is the right time to grow, you know, to start preparing to grow your business, or, you know, is there a sweet spot? And I think there's no fixed answer here, but certainly if you have got some good projections, and there should be tolerances around your projections for the growth of your product. So this is about constantly testing the market and understanding who your customers and your customer segments are and how they're responding to the product. This is about also monitoring, and this is where you do monitor your competitors and also monitor possible other new entrants to the market. I mean, we know that people's attention spans these days are a lot shorter. However, if we think about products such as Facebook, okay, Facebook started years ago, but it is still going strong now, even though the younger generation may be using other tools. And they're going from strength to strength, and they have this sort of very dominant position. And there was a moment when Mark Zuckerberg would have thought about, you know, is this thing going to grow? Is this going to take off? Do I need to now bring in a whole load more staff? And that's about your appetite for risk. So if you know, there's only so much data that you can handle that tells you about the market, and it can probably say, yes, there's projections that your product will grow, but there's also something about entrepreneurs' instinct as well. And it's about your appetite for risk. And when we come back to that risk management piece, it's about looking at, can I afford to take the hit? You know, does my financial ability stack up? Will my sponsors be able to extend because we feel that now is the time to grow? And this is about you having confidence in your product, you being able to go out and talk to those investors and say, I believe that this product is doing really well, and with an injection at this point now, we could double or triple. And so this is about, you know, collective, bit of collective responsibility there as well. So there's no right time or wrong time. Well, there's maybe some wrong times, but it's not about starting on day 1 with more staff or on day 100. This is about monitoring and being agile as we start to see the data coming through about what's happening with our product in the marketplace. Does that help?
100%. A very good question. And this question keeps on popping up in a few of the webinars that we do. It says, when is the right time to reach out to investors and start asking for investors to come into the project?
That is a really good question. I think you need to have a level of confidence in what you're doing. I'm going to probably go a bit out there because I still think that it depends on the circumstances of what you are doing. So if I'm starting something small and I want to test it with investors at a very early stage, there's something about concept testing, okay? But if I'm going to go in for something a bit bigger and a bit more complex, investors are going to want not only your own assurances, but they're going to want some credible demonstration of what you're doing. And maybe you need to have created prototypes. Perhaps you need to give them sample data. So again, I'm sorry, I can't say that there is the perfect moment to go off and seek your investors. More often than not, though, you need to, and if we go back to this business model canvas, you need to be able to articulate what you're doing, how it adds value. You need to provide some data underneath that for your numbers. So, you know, what do we think the potential revenue could be? What is your, you know, potential outlier? You know, what is your profitability effectively? What might the target markets be? And who are the kinds of people you might be working with, and what's your USP? You don't have to have a whole load of details, but sounding out investors is as much as part of the development of your proposition as it is going in for the final pitch. And one of the links that I've put in at the end as well is about the pitch deck that you might, so the slides you might use. I'm not saying that slides is necessarily the right way to approach an investor, but if you need to have something that's short and sharp that really gets to them quickly, there's a good link in the mix. So again, sorry, I'm not being very committal about on day 31, you should be going to your investors, because that's not the right answer.
Excellent. Well, we are having a few comments here that they're picking up on this idea of having a workshop on each of these bullets here. We have a few comments on this. I think, Humaira, we're going to have to do something about this. We might
I'm
have
sure
to
we can.
have a new workshop that will discuss in depth these points. I think there's so much to talk about these different points. And another question that comes to my mind is, when pitching to investors, what is the key mistake that you see startups and entrepreneurs doing?
Information overload. I think when you are going, imagine someone comes to you because they want your money, okay? And you know that they're there because they want your money. You're a busy person. You don't have a huge amount of time. So if somebody stands in front of you and then gives you verbal diarrhea, you know, a whole load of, and my product is great, la, 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 you know, would you invest in that? Probably not. I come back to the business model canvas. If you can articulate it, less is more. If you can articulate it in a sentence or two, and if you're really confident and firm about what your product is and how it is going to add value, that is a big part of it. And the other part is how you present it. Okay, you have to have confidence and passion in your product, because, and now I'm going to just tell you a little side thing here. In my spare time, I'm a politician locally, and people often listen to what you have to say. It's not always the content. Sometimes it's just about how you present yourself and whether you are presenting in a confident way. And I know one of the later sessions is talking about being able to present confidently. So there is a mix of less is more. and also how you present that information.
Excellent, excellent. There's another good question here. It says, in your opinion, what would be the best way to test the concept in case of providing a service, not a product? Very good question.
Yeah, well, and this is something I had to think about when I started up. So, you know, let's say it was a consultancy service, that's what I'm most familiar with. At the end of the day, my costs are going to be fairly low. And so actually, I am building a personal reputation, and I found myself, you know, offering to do work for short pieces of work, sometimes pro bono. Sometimes just to build relationships in key areas. Sometimes it was about doing special pricing early on to enter the market. I think it is most important, though, to build the relationships, because I can, so if I use the government, for example, government has lists of preferred suppliers, and for a new entrant like me to get into that is really, really tough. But if I use my connections and my contacts, and I go through networking events and eventually make contacts for people who work in certain government departments, I can start to build one-to-one relationships, and they can get to know you. Then at the point that they are thinking about needing that particular service, you'll come to mind. So I think there's a lot of stock there in personal relationships. And also, if you are able to offer things potentially when you start up at a different pricing model, and potentially doing some pro bono work to get some examples of your service out there as well. So perhaps doing it for NGOs and charities as well.
Well, we have another 6 or 7 minutes left out of this webinar workshop. We are going to try and promote a few of the attendees into speakers. So anybody that wants to raise a question or be promoted, say a few things that relate to some of these topics, please feel free and put it in the chat, and I'll see if I can select a few of you and promote you here. We have a couple more slides from Humeira. Yes, Humeira, please.
Just the final slide, and then I'm going to stop sharing so we can see some fantastic people. So in summary, and I hope you're reciting this with me to your computer screens, okay? Articulate your product in as short, in one sentence, 2 at the most, I'll allow 2. What it does and the value it achieves, okay? Remember that elevator pitch. Time it. Get into an elevator. See how long it takes you to articulate that sentence. Use the business model canvas to outline the product and the business model around it, which feeds into your business case. And then use the project plan to make it happen. And yes, there was a lot of items on that list. And yes, there seems to be possibly some depth in there. But actually, it doesn't have to be really complicated. So, you know, look forward to if we're going to host some other sessions on that. And last but not least, identify your own brand and what you bring to this, because the product is unique purely because you're bringing this to market. So I'm going to stop there just to let you see there's some links there for people afterwards. I'm going to stop sharing. Lorenzo, do we have some people who want to come and ask a few questions?
I'm trying to see, do we have anybody that wants to come in and say a few words that relate to these topics? Anybody who's feeling ready to come in? I see Joe. Joe, let's see if I can promote Joe from Kenya. Maybe we can have anybody else. I'm trying to see if I can find Joe. Finding people through the list and clicking on them, it's my first time doing this, so please bear with me. Finding through, here it is. Allowed to talk, more, promote to panelist. Let's see. Hi, it's Neha. Neha has a question. Let me see if I can get Neha to come in as well. I promoted Joe. I don't know if Joe is able to come in. I think he's coming. I saw Neha also. Joe, you're on mute. Neha. There's Joe. You're still on mute. We can't hear you.
Try unmuting again, because this happens on Zoom sometimes. No.
Still no. What a shame.
Sign language, maybe. Hi.
We can't hear you. Oh,
Okay.
what a shame, Joe. Try again, try again. I'll disconnect you and we'll add you again. Let's see.
Okay. So whilst, yeah, we're not really, sorry, Joe, we really can't hear you. So whilst Lorenzo sorts that, I'm just seeing some of the things coming through the chat. Should I be the face of my product? Remember, it comes with its pros and cons and pitfalls. More insight on how to translate these points in the Dubai market. Definitely get in touch with Creative Zone and the Dubai Business Women's Council. This stuff is international. It really does fit wherever you go in the world. But of course, there are some things that are specific, especially with regulations and compliance. Absolutely. Oh, look, someone there would like to, who's that? Michelle Wong has asked, does anybody want to get together so that, who's just started a business, so we can perhaps, do a Zoom coffee and a peer review of each other's business model canvases? That is a great idea. Absolutely fantastic idea. Are there any platforms to search for financing and pitch ideas to investors? Have to come back to you on that. There are lots of different ways. Do you know there is no one right or wrong way to do that? Michelle, on mute.
I promoted Michelle to panelist. I don't know if, oh, there we are. Hi, Michelle. You're on mute.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey.
You're putting up quite a few good ideas and suggestions, so I thought we'll bring you in and let you say a few things.
Thank goodness I brushed my hair. Thank you for having me.
Good. So what do you take of this session? What do you feel is important of today's discussion?
So it's funny. It's a really great session. I like how straightforward it's been. I'm a bit of a teacher's pet. I like to be a keener and look at all the different Excel sheets and stuff. And I think sometimes you can get a little lost when you're on Google, like looking for different business plan templates. And I'm actually a Creative Zone member as well, so I'm constantly going to a lot of the Creative Zone sessions. And there's just so much content, and sometimes you just want something simplified. And I love the business model canvas because it's just very simple. I already have all my ideas out there, and I just wanted to have something simple for me to put on there to kind of just review it. And sometimes it would be really nice to just have someone who's in a similar service or doing something similar to me, but maybe in a different industry, so to have fresh eyes. I've been very blessed to have mentors, and I've also hired a business coach, but someone who's in the same stage as me, so we can kind of talk about the same fears, and would be really great. And I would love to kind of just do a peer-to-peer, maybe give them my opinion on their business canvas model, and then they can do the same for me. That would be really great.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you, Michelle. And it's great to have you as our Creative Zone member and client. I hope that you're finding the work that we do and the way that we're helping you through your journey positive. So we look forward to keep on engaging with you. And thank you for coming over today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Lovely to meet you, Michelle. And yeah, I think the idea of how people get together, there's a few people saying, how do we can get in touch with each other? So Lorenzo, I don't know if you've got some thoughts about that, or I just see someone create a Facebook page somewhere along there as well. So
indeed. So we actually have a platform called CZ Connect that allows everybody to go there, create a profile, and connect with one another, share your emails, your stories. And we actually do a session every 2-3 weeks called CZ Connect Meetup, where we do a webinar where everybody, and we invite everybody to speak, introduce themselves, give their ideas. So it's a very interesting platform, and we invite everybody to connect to this. We will be sending you also an email with the details of this in case you would like to include your profile in there. So it's 6 p.m. Any final thoughts, Humeira, on today's session?
Well, firstly, can I just thank everybody for coming, because I think it's very different to when you're in a classroom, which could be more interactive. I hope people have found it useful. I have tried to keep it simple. And let me just say this to you, just what Michelle was saying before about, sometimes you get lost on Google. there is no right or necessarily drastically wrong way of doing these sorts of things. You shouldn't have to make it complicated. Why make life more complicated? So in the end, put yourself in the shoes of your investors, put yourself in the shoes of your customers. And if someone came to you with your product or with another product, how would you respond to that? And if it's not, how you want them to respond, then, there are some things you need to do differently. So when you're thinking about your business case, it's really good to maybe test it out. If you struggle to put yourself in other people's shoes, test it out on someone who doesn't really know much about what you're doing. And very quickly, they'll help you to slice out all of the extras and the superfluous. Just get to the point. I think people don't have a huge amount of time these days, and people don't really have time for even the lengthy documents that we used to. Less is more. That is my tip of the day. Excellent,
Humaira. And really, I'm so excited to hear so many good comments coming from everybody. Thank you for this session. Thank you for today. We really look forward to stay in touch with all of you. This is the first of a 12-week program. We hope to see you in all of them. I think, Humaira, you have won 150 followers, people that are going to be checking you. I'm sure they're going to be connecting with you. We welcome everybody to connect with one another on LinkedIn, on our ZZ Connect platform, so that we can continue the conversation. We will be sending everybody the presentation and a link to the full video. And let's keep up this discussion offline through social media and other avenues. Humaira, I cannot thank you enough for today. Thank you to all the attendees for taking part of this. And we look forward to another 11 more to come.
Brilliant. Lorenzo, thank you very much. And to Creative Zone and the Dubai Business Women's Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Everybody, goodbye. Thank you. We'll see you soon in another week. All the best.
Bye.
Bye-bye.